and then I wasn't able to read. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
The Indie Council is in session. Welcome. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather, talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your Master of Ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer. And this episode, we have more members of the Indie Council stepping out of the shadows. Joining the council today, we have the newly healthful Pen to Pixels creator, MinMax, and kind of funny contributor, Janet Garcia. Hi, Janet.
Hello. Excited to be here, back from the dead.
Yeah, we're so excited that you have risen. We can all start a little cult around you. That's gonna be fun. It'll have Kingdom Hearts associated things.
Man, I
I'm
had
into
no
that.
idea this was going to be my new legacy.
Yeah.
I'm ready to embrace the
Incredible.
darkness that is Kingdom Hearts, which is not an indie game, but it's chaotic.
It's still good. We also have our new council members for this episode. Lead pixel artist on Curse Crackers at Colorgrave, Brendan Steppig. Hello, Brendan.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I've had the opportunity to get up and walk around and get some exercise, so I'm a little more awake than I was earlier in the day.
That
Nice.
works. It's absolutely miserably hot outside right now, so I've just been indoors schlumping around. So that's where we are. And last but not least, Colorgrave's CEO and lead developer on Curse Crackers, Joseph Hughes. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, happy to be here.
I'm
Thanks for having us on. It'll be fun.
I really love the sort of juxtaposition of sort of me and Janet having kind of cluttered backgrounds, and both of you very stark,
Oh,
Yeah.
this is a sheet I hung up because the rest of my room is a mess. This is like sweeping it under the rug.
like you
basically.
have someone coming over and you're just like, throw blankets on it. It's gonna be fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Just put it in this door. Just close the door. They won't go in there.
So I'm gonna let you guys talk about everything you're working on and where you're coming from and why everyone should be checking your stuff out. But I want everyone to get to know you first. And I thought the best way to do that would be to put you on the spot with a wonderful game of Would You Rather Indie Edition. I've got
All right.
3 questions. I'm going to let you both sort of deliberate and make whatever answer. And me and Janet can sit here and judge.
Oh, nice. We get a judgment section on our answers. Perfect. I can think of no better way to spend the afternoon, truly.
Absolutely not. Okay, first question. Would you rather fight 5 normal-sized cats from Stray or 1 giant goose from Untitled Goose Game?
Oh,
Oh
gosh.
man.
Yeah.
So where I walk in the morning, there's a ton of geese, and I know geese
They're mean.
are some mean dudes. So I don't know. I'd probably take the cats.
I'd rather take. I think I'd rather take the goose.
That goose's wing is gonna mess you up if it's a giant goose.
Yeah, but at
That's
least
gonna
it'll be over
break your
quickly.
bones.
I feel like
Okay,
the
so
cats.
you're looking to die as efficiently as possible. Meanwhile,
Right,
I'm like,
right.
how can I survive this situation? You're like, kill me, please.
Please.
I mean,
Giant goose, end me.
Coil.
I can only imagine one of its attacks, if it's like a Souls boss game or something, would be like honk. The honk
Just
ability.
a loud honk. Be like a big
That's
wing.
I love
It's a
it.
stagger move. Just loudly honks. You're like, oh!
And you can feel free to use any of these ideas for any future games.
Okay, sick.
So-
Thank you.
The
All
ultimate
right.
Appreciate
crossover.
that. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Okay.
it'll be both. It'll be a giant goose with 5 cat minions.
Oh yeah, the cats jump off of the goose like they
Yeah.
ride it into battle.
Can they have
What
little goose
combination?
hats? Really cute. Perfect. I'm going to say that is a great split 50-50 and move on to question number 2. Would you rather be able to instantly make but not eat any of the Dave the Diver dish, or summon any dish from Venba fully made that only you can eat?
I don't know what either of those games are.
I know
Oh,
Dave the Diver.
no.
I know they've got the sushi and stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
what Venba
Yeah.
is. I feel like
Venba is, everybody should check it out. Anybody listening, if you have not already, Venba is an absolutely beautiful, recently
Ooh.
released, somewhat short narrative indie about a family that moves from India to Canada and it
I've
is
seen the art of that.
yes,
Yeah.
That looks
okay.
lovely.
it is, and the food looks fantastic. So, having some idea now of what you're looking at, would you be happier? I guess would you rather is the name of the actual game.
Yeah, forget
Would you
happiness.
rather be able to make the dishes from Dave the Diver but not eat them, or be able to eat Venba food but only you can't share it?
Definitely Venba.
Is this like I get to
Instantaneously.
like zap it like in front of me, basically? Is that the
Yeah, the basic idea. It zaps right in front of you, but only you can eat it.
or you
You
eat
can't
any of
share it. You can't like
Yeah.
end world hunger. Like I love
Interesting
that
angle.
Joseph is like, I'm not messing around. I know what I want. Like I'm not
I
gonna
mean,
pretend.
sushi's expensive, right?
Right?
So I think I'd do
Oh,
that one. I'll start my own
Start your own
sushi
sushi
place.
restaurant?
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, but if you can teleport in your own food, you're never paying grocery bills again. Like, you don't
Yeah,
have to
but
worry
if I
about
can
it.
sell sushi and I don't have to pay anything for the cost, that's like free money,
But then
basically.
you're also operating a restaurant, and then you're going to have to
Yeah,
deal with the
sounds
health
fun.
code violations of magically appearing food.
There's no codes
The
for
government's
that.
going to be all over you for that.
I'll give them sushi. They'll be fine. We'll work
Okay,
something out. It'll
okay.
be okay.
I'd also like to throw another wrinkle in there because I was thinking about exactly what all y'all are thinking about. If only you can eat it, like how angry is everyone around you gonna
That's the
be when
thing.
you're just like, I'm just gonna eat my thing. You don't worry about it. Like I'm
Yeah,
not gonna.
I'm good, guys. It's like, oh, you want to go out for pizza? Nah, I'm all right.
Do you
No,
get
I'll have
tired
my
of
food.
like the same kinds of foods? That's another question.
Well, I mean, you can probably get a pretty good variety. You
I feel
can't
like-
you can't ask him that question. He drinks like a gallon of milk a day. That's like his.
I pretty much eat the exact same things every day over the course of the week. The only modification is that 2 days a week I do fish rather than meat. So
Sounds good. So
yeah, I keep it pretty plain and static.
Is it also on the same days? Like you're like Tuesdays
Yeah.
pasta? Like what's today?
Like, okay, so every day is like yogurt, milk, meat, and
So it's the food pyramid, like just
It's-
straight
yeah,
off.
you're doing great.
and then on Fridays and one random day whenever I want to do it, I'll swap out meat with fish.
So basically, if Brendan picks being able to manifest sushi for you on a couple of days a week, that would be
you can have that
perfect.
too. Yeah.
No,
I'll drop
he can
by.
cover me. Yeah.
Well, we are 2 for 2, 50-50 split. I'm very excited that my questions are getting some response here.
You and I are opposites, like constantly. We constantly think the opposite thing, and it's part of why we work well together. It's because like we balance each other's crazy out a little bit.
This is going to be the moment you both remember as the thing that started like the big fight.
Oh, no.
There'll be
This
war
was
in the
it.
studio.
This was it.
He
This is
wouldn't
when
let
the
me get any
cracks began.
sushi. Question 3. Would you rather every indie you've ever played blink out of existence, or every indie you've never played blink out of existence?
Ooh, this is
Second one. Second one instantly.
Every indie I've ever played blink out of existence, or every indie I've never played blink out of existence.
Because I haven't played a lot more indie games than the ones that I've played, so I get rid of a lot more competition by instantly booking more games.
Oh,
from
no.
a competitive angle.
I
That's
didn't even
interesting.
think about that angle.
But if you got rid of the ones you have played from existence, then if you can still remember it, you could make it, and then you made the best game you
Right.
ever played.
Well, why would I want to do that? That would be so creatively bankrupt and boring. That's no fun.
Oh man, that's really tough for me to say, because I know there's a lot of really good ones out there, but there are a lot of indie games that kind of are what made me want to get into doing like indie stuff and pixel art in general. So I think I'd have to keep the ones that I have and get rid of all the ones that I have never played.
Yeah.
Okay, last one.
So-
You're both in agreement, even though I think for very different
Amazing.
reasons. And moving on from there, as we already started to get a little, glimpse into the background of both of you, let's go ahead and talk about Colorgrave and Curse Crackers. And I don't know how you want to start that, if you want to start in the macro and go micro or opposite, but go ahead and take it away.
I mean, we could start like, here's how we met and got together and started making games, or we could talk about Curse Crackers first and kind of go into that after.
I'll tell the romantic story.
The romantic stories. Well, what happened was I was just kind of looking around for stuff to do, and I was in a Discord chat for like a Persona parody game, but it was the Golden Girls, like the old sitcom.
Okay. Yeah.
And somebody was in there that Joseph knew, and they were like, hey, does anybody know how to do pixel art? And so I got brought onto the team. I just happened to stick around for a long time. I think I was probably one of the only people who also would constantly be like, hey, this is like a bad idea. We shouldn't do things this way. Let's do something else. And so we started working on one game, and then we had to shelve it because we needed to get something done and it was way too big of a project. And then we did our first game, Prodigal, and then we were going to go back to that other game, but they're like, no, it's still too big. We have to get more games out. And so then we did Curse Crackers. And Curse Crackers is a lot of things about Curse Crackers are kind of direct responses to feedback that we got on Prodigal and things that we felt about Prodigal. And also we wanted to make more expressive characters in terms of like the overworld stuff. We wanted to make something that wasn't a top-down Zelda game, so we did a platformer instead.
That makes sense.
And some stuff like that. But I'm about out of words to say. So.
Yeah. Now, having like some background of y'all having two different minds on everything, is that the way you remember it going down, Joseph?
I remember hiring Lou and thinking, this dude is weird. Because one of the first things he sent me that wasn't work related is he just took a photo of a frog at like 2 a.m. and sent it to me. And I was like, why? It's a frog on a wall. Why are you sending this to me? Who is this guy? And then, we worked together for a little bit. And one day he sits me and he's like, everyone arts, but mine sucks in this. And this isn't okay. And we're going to have to change all of it or do something different.
Okay.
And, I was like, oh, okay. I kind of like this guy. He's weird, but I kind of like this guy. He's willing to like call it out, and he'll take the reins on the artistic end, because I am not artistically gifted at all. So to have somebody that grabs that particular bull by the horns and makes sure that everything's all lined up and clean and tidy, oh my gosh. It is a gift, and he's about as crazy about getting all this stuff done as I am. So we make a solid team.
That sounds awesome. We are going to talk a little bit more about Curse Crackers at the end of the show when we talk about what we are playing, because I believe both Janet and I got to jump into it. Yep. Thank you so much for providing codes for us.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed
it. But before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into some indie news. And as you are indie developers in the thick of things, you can be as opinionated or not for everything on here as you would like. But we just passed up Gamescom. So let's talk about the indie presence there. Gamescom, not a particularly like indie heavy show typically, very, very AAA dominated. But we did get some cool things. So one of my favorite things that I was not expecting came out of Xbox, who did a kind of live stream every day for several days, and just randomly in the middle of that, ID at Xbox got this amazing retrospective for its 10th anniversary. So it looked at everything sort of building up to it and the history of Xbox platforms and indies on Xbox platforms, highlighted some of their more popular games that came out of it. And I absolutely love that. I will put that video in the description below so everybody can check that out, because it is, I think it's only about 15-20 minutes at most, and really, really cool, really, really worthwhile. Everybody who has been watching the show knows that we talked about ID at Xbox in our first episode when we talked about the Xbox showcase. And basically, it is a program that helps indie developers get onto Xbox platforms, giving away dev kits, giving out certain resources to help them out. And alongside this, I was completely floored because a couple of games that I've had my eye on for a while just got release dates. I'm like, what? This was not like announced or like trumpeted in any way. So I was very excited to see that SteamWorld Build is getting a release date on December the 1st. Pretty good timing. I like that. We've been waiting for it. I got to play a little bit of it at GDC. It looks fantastic. It's really in depth. It's got obviously the building aspect, but there's also a lot of exploration. You're like digging underground and like trying to find gems and things, and monsters attack you, and it's a lot of fun. It really is. It had a lot of personality, inspiration. But what I am super excited about, and people have heard me go off on this game about this game and how much I love it, is that Worldless got a release date, and that is October the 4th, which is a wild time for games to be coming out. October is super packed. I am nervous for them because I want this game to succeed. It is a Metroidvania, beautiful art style. I believe the developer behind this that I spoke to also worked on Grease, if you want to say it probably more properly. And you can tell the inspiration is there. The art style is there. It's this really minimalistic looking, like ethereal, astronomical theme. And the combat is so interesting because it is sort of turn-based and real-time at the same time. And you are encouraged not to kill them, but rather like absorb them and get their powers and level up that way. So it's got a very interesting twist on combat as well. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. Janet, what do you think about the October release date timing?
I think, like you said, it's definitely a tough space, but I think it's really hard to find that perfect timing. Curious what like y'all think in terms of trying to time your game and how much you care about the release calendar surrounding it. Because it seems like as much as you try to plan for it, there isn't always a way to sort of get your own space. So I feel like maybe this just made sense for it, the fiscal aspect and what they had going on when they wanted to get it out. They've been showing it for a while. It was at a couple of PAXs. So maybe that's kind of the spirit of that kind of release date where it's like, look, we need to get this thing out for a certain time. But how do y'all go about figuring out your release dates, and how much does that competing calendar weigh in on that?
I mean, previously our release dates were based upon how quickly can we get this game out, because we need the income.
Yep.
And I'm also increasingly of the opinion there is no good time to release an indie game. Mm-hmm. There are worse times to release an indie game, but there is no longer a good time to release one. And we're in the age of the shadow drop as well. So there's best laid plans. It's all going to come unraveled. You can't count on being the only dog in the fight on any particular week or day. So.
Yeah, kind of the best thing that you can do is try to avoid the big events that you know about, things where that different media outlets or content creators, if you're trying to do outreach to them, when that they're not going to be going to cover a certain thing, like big conventions or big online events, stuff like that is probably where you would want to try and fall one side or the other of it. But
so like dropping right now in between Gamescom and PAX might not be the best idea, is what you're saying?
No, which was kind of where we ended up. But that also had a lot to do with some other timing stuff on our end. We really couldn't wait much longer to get the Switch stuff out, and
you've been sitting on it for months,
yeah,
ready to go.
So we wanted to get that out there and kind of try and get it out before even more stuff happened in the year.
Yeah, because 2023 has been a wild year, not just for indies, but for all games. And AAA typically gets a little more competitive in the fall to wintry season.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, I've noticed it might just be a 2023 thing. I don't know. Maybe people are finally catching up from their projects from like COVID was still messing everything up, and maybe people are finally getting stuff out. Or maybe it's just as indies get more popular, it's more and more people are trying to jump in and see what they can do. But yeah, it's been wild, and I'm really interested to see if 2024 works the same way and this is just a continuing trend, or if this is a kind of spike for this year that we see go, and then like in 5 years we'll be like, y'all remember 2023? That was an amazing year.
I mean, I think since a lot of games usually take a good handful of years to develop, it probably is more of a spike than anything else, just because you get that 3 to 6 year kind of development cycle on something, and once that drops, there tends to be a lot of other things on that same cycle.
And speaking of shadow drops, like, how do you feel about indie shadow drops as developers? Is that something you would be interested? Like, is that
Would
a
you ever
strategy?
dare?
Yeah, is that a
think-
strategy you would go for, or tell other people to go for?
No.
No.
If you can shadow drop on like Nintendo Direct, maybe. But we've
Nintendo Direct tomorrow.
We've watched people tell us how excited they are to shadow drop their game and just release it, and we say, don't stop, please don't. And they do it anyway, and they're dead in the water. A game's release is basically like trying to kick a snowball down a hill, and if you release and you don't have anything built up beforehand, you're gonna have a really hard time. It's already incredibly hard, and a brutal uphill battle. So you need to not make it harder for yourself in any way that you can.
100%. I just want to shout out 2 more games that I'm super excited about that came out of Gamescom. Streets of Rogue 2. We sort of already knew that this was happening. The creator had spoken about working on the next project before, but we got a sort of 2024 release date, so things are a little more set than before. And then axolotl, which is a great word, and a great creature. But it is probably my favorite trailer of the entire convention. It starts out with like, look how cute we are. We're little axolotls. Yeah. And then it just goes to like suddenly shift and they're shooting things and there's mayhem and there's fire. It's absolutely fantastic. When I got this, I got the press release early so that I could be ahead of it. And the PR person who sent it to me, I'm on a good relationship terms with them, and they're like, I apologize for inflicting this trailer upon you. So I will put that in the link in the chat below, or not the chat. We're not live streaming, Janet. I will put that in the description below. And while you're enjoying that, I'm going to switch over to the mini indie showcase.
Wait, really quick, because I just didn't see this trailer until. Sorry, I didn't see this until now.
Until right now.
Yeah, because like whatever, right? So I'm like, I tabbed over to it because I'm like, yeah, maybe this will be one I want to add to my wish list pile. And I do want to shout out with this trailer the axolotl with there's like an A and a K. It's a little tough for the SEO. I'm not gonna lie. AK is axolotl.
Yeah.
It's cute when you look at it, but it's hard to say aloud. But if
Sort of,
V can make it, that's too many V's, then anyone can. There is a clip in this of what I believe is an ox, or some form of an ox, like swinging around like a giant like magical battalion thing. And I think that alone, it's like I'm in. Like that. I love a trailer that can have that one pop that feels like, okay, maybe I've seen a lot of like top down ish action stuff, but that little moment is like, okay, that's the secret sauce. And I love a little moment like that in any trailer. So I want to shout that out real quick.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic job by the team. I love this trailer. Everyone should go watch it at least 5 times. And speaking of watching things 5 times, the Mini Indie Showcase went on this morning as of recording. And that is put on by our good friends over at 6-1 Indie, very specifically our fellow member of the council, Mike Towndrow. Not that he specifically put it on, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying.
He's involved, so
he's involved with us.
But he's not here today, so if you want to like finally tell him what you think, now's the time.
Here's the
thing. Tell him not to listen to the episode.
Like, I was so mean to him on the last episode. He's a lovely human being. And I said I was going to be nice to him, and it's like he's not here, so I'm going to be super nice to him because he's not here to hear it.
We'll sense it.
So 6-1 Indie and Mike Towndrow absolutely crushed this. I love their showcases. They did a mini indie showcase back at GDC, and I did not know Mike very well at that time, and got to see that, and it was just
the good times.
It comes out of nowhere, and it's just, oh, they're so good. Production value is great. The pace just keeps going, but it never overwhelms because they have this really very smart structure of like, here's our clump of 3 Metroidvanias or 3 horror games. So you're like, okay, I'm going to get through these 3, or if these 3 aren't my thing, I only have 3 games to get through before I get to whatever thing might be my thing. But like, horror is not my thing, and I'm shouting out like a scary game from the showcase because and there were 33 games, 47 minutes, like it went, and everything. Like, I love that they left the bloopers in at the end, and Mike at one point said something kind of silly and sort of like flirty, and he was like, don't worry, my wife approved everything in the script. It was so good.
That's very funny.
So like it went fast, but it had personality. So absolutely fantastic job, you guys. You did it. They got a shout out on Kind of Funny today. Also, congrats on that. That's great for indie like press. Getting that kind of recognition is fantastic and really helps out. So I will definitely be putting the showcase down in the description. Please go and watch it. I love watching these shows specifically because as a sort of indie press person myself, a lot of the times I'm not that surprised when things pop up. I'm like, oh, okay, that's the thing we've heard about, or I've been keeping an eye on this. But when I watch the mini indie showcase, because Mike is also in this position, he has a great platform to show off games I've never heard of before, and they're just like bangers that come out of nowhere. So I want to start a little bit of a shout out here by shouting out Doggy Don't Care. Was probably one of my favorite games of the show. And you're just a dumb little looking dog, just like I think it's a pug, and you look dumb, and you're at home unsupervised, and you're just doing a checklist of like, how much trouble can I make while my humans are gone?
It's got some of that Untitled Goose Game energy, but
yes,
it seems more activity based than puzzle based, which is interesting because we're kind of starting to see a bit of games operating this lane. Henry Halfhead, which I believe isn't out yet, still also has some of that. The quick hit checklist things, even to a degree, what the franchise kind of operates in that way. That obviously that's much faster paced than kind of what any game has pulled off in terms of objectives, like from start to end. Like that is like the snappiest experience I've had. But yeah, they popped for this one as well. I had it on my list too. It looks really cute, and I think I would love, and please, if either of you can describe what this art style is. I always want to hone in on describing art styles, and I'm not sure how to couch this. It sort of has like a soft like flatness to it. I've seen it before, but I don't know if y'all have better terminology to describe what Doggy Don't Care is putting down, but I find that look very appealing.
Yeah.
For which one?
Doggy Don't Care. It's sort of it's like vibrant in the way that cartoons are. There's not a lot of extra complication in the art style. And it just gives you the feeling of warmth and silliness, really, is kind of what it exudes.
There's like a flat minimalism to it, but it's like, these are just words I'm throwing out. Like, I'm sure there's a better way to describe it. So I'm curious if y'all are able to.
No, just looks like kind of fun, sort of jelly bean looking art, you know?
I love it.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching the video, go ahead and throw down some terms in the comments to like as pretentious as possible to describe a cartoony art style. I would love to hear it. Janet, what struck out to you?
Well, I also had Doggy Don't Care, but I also have it's so nice you had to put it on there twice. I have Project Anomaly Urban Supernatural Investigator. Again, the SEO is a little tough these days, but this looks super cool. I kind of was going through the showcase looking for the weird and the wonderful, is sort of what I gravitate towards. And this feels very much that. It is a 2.5D first person adventure mystery game is how it's described. And, speaking of art styles, this has this funky, almost like, what's the word? Almost creepypasta-esque internet-ism to it that I think is really cool. I'm a big fan of art styles that almost have like a supernatural collage effect to them. There's something really funky and it's almost off-putting, but like in an enticing way. You know what I mean? Like it jumps out. It's a little garish, but it feels highly stylized because of it. So this just seems cool. You're walking around, you're investigating things. I enjoy anything that kind of pulls in aspects of the walking sim genres, the visual novel genres. And there's also an aspect of taking pictures as well, which we've shouted out a lot of games that have either are photography games or have photography elements. So sort of the pitch on Steam that they have listed is you solve cases by taking pictures of cryptids, urban legends, and mythological creatures, as well as befriending them in an open world environment. So it just seems like it has a bit of a fun mechanic, a funky look, and I could see a lot of personality and charm coming out of those interactions. That's at least what I'm hoping for. Those are my dreams and projections onto this game, and that's why I have it here on my list.
Yeah, 100%. It looks very much like a sort of indie take on like Fatal Frame and Pokemon Snap. Like it's a friendly Fatal Frame, which I love. And then I'm just going to do 2 quick shout outs for other games that caught my eye. Horla, especially, like it's a scary game and you can tell it's going to be scary and it's going to freak me out, but I definitely have to check it out. It is another sort of like you're going into a haunted house and trying to find like a folder is the idea, but it is this sort of beautiful, vibrant pop art. Again, anybody who wants to leave a comment for how to describe art styles, go right on ahead. Give us all the words and terms that you've got. And then Squirrel with a Gun is really all you need to know is the title of the game. It's called Squirrel with a
title. That is a really good title in the sense that like it is the one with the squirrel with a gun.
Yeah, 100%. You're gonna know it as soon as you see it. The trailer is hilarious. I absolutely love it. Janet, what are your shout outs? Just quick
I have Solitaire, which I'm trying to have these tabbed out. I'm trying to grab it. This one, the second I saw it, and this is kind of how I go about perusing indies. I'm sure at one point we'll have maybe that episode where we talk about how do we pick which things to focus on. For me, again, I'm looking for, I don't know, the familiar with the twist of different. I really enjoyed, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on it. We talked about it on earlier episodes. It's a card game, but it's like feelings based. Signs of the Sojourner.
Signs of the Sojourner.
Yep. So seeing Solitaire, I immediately was like, this reminds me of Signs of the Sojourner. Like the idea of playing with card games in a new context and in a potentially simplified context. So for those who don't know, Solitaire it's a cozy fortune telling cafe game, which I feel like is so many buzzwords that appeal to me that I've already bought this game that you cannot buy yet, that kind of thing. Again, very visual novel-esque of people are coming up. I personally also just really love a narrative structure that allows for simplicity in movement to open up storytelling opportunities. And I think any game that's set in that kind of cafe setup has that, where the thing that's changing is maybe the cards and the people, but you're kind of interacting in a singular space, and that space is constantly being recontextualized, and there's so many opportunities for that. And I love the art style of this. It's very almost like neon color palettes, but toned down to have a little bit of a pastel look to it. There's something spooky, fun, and eye-catching about it a lot. So that one is one that I'm looking forward to for sure. And then my final one is Crypt Custodian. This is one where, like, sometimes for me, like, a main character goes a long way. I've seen a lot of games like this. This is a Metroidvania game. You're, exploring, you're cleaning up after the afterlife, but you're the cat. I don't know. Like, that's it. That's basically it. That's what drew me to it. I think the combat and the general traversal has an aspect of promise in terms of you have a little bit of a jump and a dash. I'm a big platformer fan, so I'm always looking for ways that people can play with that movement. You're kind of going around different areas, interacting with switches. So it seems very, in that sense, kind of run of the mill. And for me, the thing that drew me to it is the afterlife component and the stylization of the cat, where I'm like, maybe this can give me some of that Death's Door energy, but I'm a cat who's cleaning up. Like, I'm cool. That works for me. It's enough to get me to give it a go. And I think as long as it delivers on feeling and momentum, it should be a pretty fun time. So hopeful for that one.
The protagonist weapon being a broom, and the tagline, which I absolutely loved, is "Sweep up the afterlife." Like, how perfect is that? So, Brendan, Joseph, just of the list of names, like going off of nothing else, obviously you just heard a bunch of artistic terms. Throw those out. If you were just looking at the names of these, which game would you want to play first?
I have to pretend I didn't just go look all of them up on Steam. I'm guessing if I had no idea what any of these looked like, I'd probably try Crypt Custodian.
I was gonna say, actually, though, I kind of flipped through the mini indie thing that you guys mentioned, and a couple games on there that I recognize that I think are pretty neat is there's the Slay the Princess.
Yep.
Yeah.
I watched somebody play through that one, like the demo of it, and it's kind of that choose your own adventure illustrative thing, and it's just a really interesting concept, I think, and one that I've actually kind of been following the development of, because the developers in a server that I'm in and kind of post their progress, is Rune Fencer Ilia, and I think they're also another small team pixel art indie thing, and they've been working on that one for a while, but it's looking pretty interesting right now. Actually, I haven't seen it for a little bit.
Well, go and check it out on the mini indie showcase, everybody. We could sit here and mention all 33 games. Literally, I didn't see a single one where I'm like, I'll pass on this. So go and check it out. I love that all of us sort of had different things that caught our eye as well. So maybe something will catch your eye that we haven't mentioned. There's plenty still left to see. But before you do that, we are going to turn over to topic of the show. And because we are in such a weird time between Gamescom just behind us and PAX just in front of us, let's talk about indies at conventions. Me and Janet are obviously going to be able to talk more about indie press, but our wonderful guests for the show let me know that they might have some opinions on this particular.
I can feel like the stress levels rising among everybody.
It's like
quick flashbacks beaming across the floor. Yeah. I'm sorry, I really get disappointment than being late to the appointment. It's just a whole thing. But
we can talk if you guys want us to start off the conversation so that you feel a little less like the teacher calling on you in the middle of like popcorn, then we can. Or if you want to jump into sort of what your thoughts are, I can give a little overview of. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Indies at conventions is interesting. Conventions are typically made for bigger titles to get sort of interest in, but indies have become a major standby of all of them. There is no convention you can go to now that does not have some kind of indie presence, and usually some kind of big indie presence. And usually that indie presence is all in one space, which I want to kind of dive into at some point. It helps. Benefits include things like getting word of mouth. A lot of the times people, especially press like us, you maybe don't run across this sort of thing like that comes through your email, and maybe you don't get the full thing, but you're walking by a convention booth and you see something in action, you're like, wow, now that I see it actually working, this looks fantastic, or I've literally never seen this before. So you get to have a lot of that. Getting to be just in this space with people that make games, that help fund games, that help market games, making those connections and collaborations can be very important for both the press side and the developer side. But it can be very tough. Costs are usually very high to get to these conventions. For indies, that's usually not a simple matter. When you are planning to get to and this works on both sides too. When you're planning on going to a convention, you're not getting your work done, but work for the convention done. And there are other twists and turns that make it both great and difficult. So with all of that sort of in your minds, Joseph, what do you think about conventions and indies?
Oh man, do I have opinions? There was one standout moment that I kind of that kind of sticks in my head about our first trip to PAX, and you might say it's negative, but I think it's kind of a perception of the industry, right? So we're kind of cordoned off to one section of PAX in a strip with a bunch of other, you know, humble indie comrades, as you said, and this guy's walking by with his girlfriend, and he goes, "Oh, this is like the indie area." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine," because like they're coming from yacht clubs area and they're Devolver, all that stuff, and there's the public perception and opinion that those are indies. So I think that kind of struck me of the con goer looks at that sort of strip as being like the developer ghetto, so to speak, and they don't want to stop. They're just passing by to go to the next other important thing. So that was interesting to me. It yeah. There's clearly value to it, and I think that going to conventions to network, to meet people, like that's very smart, that's great, but I think you really have to think about what is the size of my operation and what am I doing, because you are going to spend a lot of money that you need in order to develop the game, and burning a ton of time preparing for it and a ton of time going to it, that if you don't think you're going to come out of it with more than you went in with, you're wasting your time and you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain for no point. So,
have you noticed just in conversations and being with your fellow comrades, talking, I'm sure you all get to talking about how everything goes. Have you noticed that? Is it sort of a 50-50? Is it more often than not you get more people, more eyes on your game, it is something worthwhile, or is it something that really is a risk?
I mean, just speaking from a lot of what we experience with PAX East. So going to PAX East for us was a super ideal situation because we had just finished the last update for Curse Crackers, and so We had nothing that was like stressing us out that we had to worry about right once we got back from wherever we were going. We could just focus on the convention. And it was really cool. We got to meet a bunch of people. We got to meet some different developers that we still like chat with and hang out with, even though it's only across the internet. But a lot of the connections that we ended up making didn't end up going anywhere. A lot of different content creators or media people that we reached out to, they would come by, they gave us their cards whenever, and we'd reach out to them, but not really any response to those messages. To be fair, I'm sure they were talking to a lot of people and got a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind too, is even though people are going to be stopping by your booth and they might really like your demo or whatever you've got there, that also doesn't necessarily translate to it sticking with them afterwards. Maybe they'll see your thing later and they'll be like, oh, hey, I remember that from that thing. But they also still have to kind of be inside your channels of communication as well. So
yeah, 100%. On the flip side, I can talk a little bit about being an indie lover who is in the big press, non-indie press space. Because if anyone who is watching is not familiar, I did start out my career as a Game Informer, and I loved indies, and I was always trying to cover indies when we went to conventions or just every day. And it is a lot of like what you say. It always broke my heart because I would love when I got the time to sit down and play an indie game, and I was 100%. I'm going for it. I love this. Give you my card, make sure that I'm getting something done. But at the end of the day, a lot of the press outlets need to be pushing the big AAA thing that's happening. They need to be getting eyeballs. They need to be, highlighting the things that are going to bring people into the website or buying magazines. So a lot of the times, if you're an indie focused person at a big outlet, it is a big push for you to be like, you may not know this if you're a developer, but they may have been championing you to their team, and their team's just like, we can't, or trying to find some way to cover, and they're like, okay, you can cover it if you get all of this other stuff
all your other
done.
work done.
Then...
Yeah, they're like, are you gonna do this on your free time?
I was like, okay.
I feel like this is taking away from your job because which is not to do this. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things going against every facet of work on both sides of things, and then three sides if you think of like the PR kind of infrastructure level of it too. I'm curious to know, like you guys mentioned, sort of the maybe like player acquisition, media, which can lead to additional like eyes on your game. Do you feel like there's, and of course like the socializing with your peers, to what degree, if any, do you feel like it's helpful for things like feedback, like player feedback? Because I've spoken to other developers who go hardcore. Like I knew like one person who was like, oh, I'm like redoing the bills every night in my hotel room, like implementing feedback. And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, do you feel like there's any, like, what has been your experience with that? Is that something that you feel like you can get out of a convention? Is it dependent on the game? Like, what has been your experience?
Well, everything we release and finish is perfect. So we don't need to have any feedback to act on.
Like, what do you think? I'm sorry, have you made a game or do you just play them?
Our show demo at PAX was perfect, and we didn't feel the need to react to any of that feedback because we're the greatest to ever do it. And thankfully, we have a very supportive and lovingly toxic community that is more than happy to give me way more feedback and opinions than I could ever want in my entire life. So I don't particularly need to go to a convention to get a bunch of feedback. And, that's great that we get so much of it because that lets us have a demo build that's so solid and we're so proud of. Like I had 6 or 7 people in the community testing the demo we were taking to PAX and reacting to their feedback beforehand. So like feedback is definitely part of it, but luckily for us, we have a really strong community that we're able to engage with and get their feedback and opinions and act on that without having to go to a convention.
For other people, if the expense isn't, you know, detrimental, like you're committed to going to this thing, I think it's important to, if you're really trying to get feedback, you need to signal that you're open to that, because a lot of the time people aren't going to either A, like think about it in that context, or B, be comfortable uh sharing that, you know, criticism, because they, why would they want to just say something rude to a stranger? There are people who are like that, but
You're like, I live here. This is why I came here. Just to relate to strangers.
But it's, you know, there is a great opportunity to get feedback, especially if you don't have a large feedback pool, or you're worried like, hey, maybe the people who I'm getting feedback from aren't being critical enough with this. What are random passersby going to say? That could be really valuable. There are probably less expensive options for you to be able to get that, but you know, it can be really useful for that.
Speaking of the expense for a minute, let's talk about where the responsibility lies for indies being at showcases, and sort of if showcases need to take more responsibility for that.
Oh dear.
There was an absolutely amazing speech, and I can't remember who made it, but it was at GDC at the award ceremony for indies, saying like, hey, I'm really glad to win this award, but a lot of the people who deserve to be here can't. Literally, GDC happens in San Francisco. It's a very expensive city. It's very expensive to get to. It's very expensive to house people here while you are staying. It's very expensive to eat while you are here. And basically the acceptance speech was like, it's great that we won this award, but there are so many other people who deserve to be here who just can't. And that's putting the uh, emphasis on GDC should be ensuring that more people can come if they want that indie presence, because people are going now to conventions to go see indies. Indies are starting to become such a draw. So what do you guys think about where sort of that line lies?
That's a really complicated question because I think the line on what is an indie is way too vague, and it's almost become like uh, a corrupted marketing term, right? So there is not a common understanding or definition of what the word means anymore. So, you know, I see people saying, oh, Hi-Fi Rush was my favorite indie game of the year.
Interesting.
Okay. People saying, say, Sea of Stars is like their most anticipated indie game of the year. And some people will argue that like Stray isn't an indie game. Like it creates a lot of confusion. And the problem with saying like, oh, well, we should help indies get to these events and all that sort of stuff, right? Well, what defines an indie? Like how do you determine what are the indies that need to go? Is it someone that is, you know, has an operating cost or funding of say 100,000 a year and that's all they have, or is it, you know, they make under this amount? When there's no definition or limitation on what an indie is, it's just going to get taken advantage of and abused like any other system by people who probably don't need it. So that would be my initial reaction to saying like, you know, the organizations need to get people there. I think people will just take advantage of it because the term isn't clear and defined.
I think it's difficult also to, I mean, you know, it's good. This is going to sound weird because we are a small indie team. It's good, you know, for if we were able to go to all these different events and show our stuff off and all that stuff. But the conventions are also, you know, they're a business too, and they need to take in the stuff that's going to bring them money. And you know, it'll work out better for them to keep having the bigger people that are going to be the draws, or if there's like standout indie titles, you know, those come in and stuff. But you know, for people who are unknowns like us or like many of our peers, excuse me, sorry, um, there's there's not really much reason for them to give us an extra break, and I can't fault them for it just because of how they've got to go through things, but it does suck.
I mean, it sucks, but like also why we're in a very digital age, right? So why are the award shows limited to, oh, can you show up in table? Why aren't indies trying to do more things online together and having showcases like your friend did recently and award shows? Because that answers to a demand, and you have stuff coming up that's like that, like the Wholesome Direct that does a lot of showcasing of cute wholesome games. And I think
also, by the way, hosted by our other member of the council who is not here today, one Jenny Wyndham. So thank you for shouting out the Wholesome Games.
Yeah, we had a buddy that got his game into that. So, but to me, the answer isn't to say like finger wagging. You should be paying for other people to attend your event. Like if indies don't like this event and we're not able to attend, we can make our own thing. We're perfectly empowered to do that and do it at a fraction of the cost, because we're not going to do it in San Francisco. And
well, heck, another one, Sage, the Sonic
Sage
Amateur
is awesome.
Games Expo.
Sage is a really cool game expo, and they've been really cool to us, even though who are we? So they were fun to work with, but they're not limited to indie in particular. But I'm sure the majority that's in there is indie. So.
And when we did talk, just like briefly touch on this, and I want to kind of circle back to it. Indie exclusive spaces at big conventions, is it a net positive, or is it sort of a harmful thing? I would love to get your thoughts and opinions. I know it's another kind of complicated, intricate question, but
I mean, I think it could go either way, right? On the one hand, you're in a space among your peers, and you can be judged. It kind of goes back into what Joseph said about what is an indie, but theoretically, you're with people who are kind of at your same level, and you can kind of network and compare yourself, and people who are going there kind of like know what to expect, because we're not making the next AAA game. It's just not happening.
We'll fight them still. We'll take.
Yeah.
Them head. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll take them down. But
so that's the ultimate goal, is to get just the big indie arenas actually just a fight between all the indie vendors.
Yes, that's right.
Fight to the death.
I won't win. I won't
not
win.
Literally
but...
fight. No physical altercations. It's more so that like Lou and I look at our games as we're indie and not AAA, but we're competing with AAA. Like we want to beat everybody and outdo everybody that we can. So we're not kind of kicking back and be like, oh well, pity us, we're indie. It's okay that we have bugs or we have this. Like we're going for it. We don't want to kick back and toast ourselves to any degree. We want to outdo our superiors. So
we have mountains to climb.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we mean by fight.
But sorry, that's kind of a tangent though. Indie spaces are cool. The problem with that is you'll run out of space. When we went to PAX East, they did have like a big block of indie games, but we weren't actually in that block. We were kind of off to the side with a bunch of other stuff that was like further down towards the entrance or exit or whatever direction we were. And we don't know the criteria for how they arrange these things. It seems a little semi-random sometimes. So I also just don't know, depending on the space, if they even have the capability to do that, or if they have a bunch of big people with like those huge booths that take up 100 square feet or whatever.
Right. Like I appreciate how absolutely unbelievable it must be to organize all of that and get things set up. But I'm always back and forth on whether or not indies should be all clumped together. I can't remember who said it, but I was talking to someone who was like, they should do away with it and just have the indies sprinkled in. And I'm like, that would be interesting. And I think people wouldn't have the preconceived notion of like, okay, we're just strolling into the indie section and we're not going to take this seriously. Like your we'll call him a gentleman comments saying, oh, this is the indie space. But at the same time, it's easier for me, like just selfishly, because I know I'm going to try to hit all the indies I can. If they're all in one place, I can cover all of them faster and see more things. But also, it allows people who are interested in indies to go see indies, and
Right.
you are not like directly competing against like, hey, here's this person who had like $1 million to set up their booth and they have fun toys and fun setups and photo ops and I'm just the person next to them. Or does that mean that more people go to that booth and then foot traffic just increases?
I think it's impossible to know, right? I think either case, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you create the quote unquote indie ghetto, there will be people that will just walk by it, and then you'll have people that are excited to go through all of it, right? And if you sprinkle them in, you'll have people that pass by and are thinking, okay, this is interesting. And then you'll have the people who walk by, don't want to look, or the ones that, dude, Pokemon's right there. My eyes are on Pokemon. I will never look away. I have to go to Pokemon. And like you're sunk with those types of people, right? But at least like it's really hard to say because you can't really do a proper study on it to determine like which is better for who, because there are so many random factors at play that play into who comes by your booth and talks to you and checks it out and who decides to stop. So like once we started getting honestly, once we got a little more annoying, we got a lot more traction at our booth. So, you know, that helped us in our current position, and I'm sure it could have helped us in the other position. So a lot of it comes down to what are you doing and how hard are you willing to work? And, you know, we were working that we weren't kicking back during PAX. We were doing everything we could to get as much attention, as much business cards and flyers out there as we could. But
what does that work look like? You mentioned you were like, oh, I'm going full annoying. Like, what does that look like in practice?
So trying to engage with people, talking to people walking by, we set up basically the first day we kind of watched and learned how are people operating, what's going on here, okay, what can we do better to try and, draw more victims in, right? So we set up this like little table like Halloween with a bowl, and we're like, here's all this stuff you can take. Ooh, and then people would stop to take the stuff, and then I slide in with a flyer and be like, hello, would you like to hear about the game? And then they were stuck, they were trapped, right? They had to listen to the pitch, or they're a jerk for just taking free stuff and leaving. And there were a lot of jerks who just took free stuff and left, and that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So that was part of what we did to try and generate more attention. It looks like my thing.
Yeah, you become blurry.
Yeah, you're very blurry.
Hold on.
I'm like, maybe this is an artistic direction you're going with.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, I don't know. My camera got drunk for a moment. I apologize.
It was kind of like in Pokemon, you walk by the trainers and they get the little
the music
point over their head. That was us, but with like flyers. And so anybody who like paused for a second and just looked in our direction, we'd be like, "Hey!"
God have mercy if you made eye contact. It was too late at that point.
You have a bunch of people just like going forward, like, "Don't look."
Is there a strategy? Is there a strategy that you've tried to do that you felt like maybe didn't work for y'all personally or your game? Because I feel like I've seen, Jill, I'm curious as to your experience as like an attendee. There's so many different ways to slice it. There's like one of the best incentives I've seen is for now named Smooshy come home because they had little hats.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted the hats. And the game's also dope. But like,
yeah,
there's a lot of great games and it's hard to get visibility. But like everyone was walking around with those hats. Like that and Cult of the Lamb was like the most visibly swagged attention grabber where it's like, where can I get that? Which is
Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that because it's like, well, Cult of the Lamb is like a lot, they had a big booth and a big area.
Or like
Exactly.
another
But
crab's treasure threatening to
yes.
bring a whole tub of live
But
crabs.
you think
That
of
would be amazing.
both of those games executing on that same idea with very different budgets and very different, Smooshie was like a computer behind like a table, and the other one was like a big marquee. So what have you done that you feel works for you? Is there anything you've done that you feel like didn't end up working?
Well, we haven't gone to enough big that was our only big convention that we've gone to. So we haven't had enough experience to like experiment with that kind of thing.
Our first and our last.
Potentially.
After this show comes out.
They'll never let us in again.
We
Like,
heard what you
honestly,
said.
honestly, the way I look at it strategy wise is like Lou likes going to these, and he loves to do all the networking, meeting with people, all that stuff. He's a social little fella, and I don't travel well. I am unpleasant and grumpy, and honestly, like looking at the numbers and how PAX turned out for us, even if we thought like this turned out well, we did a good job, whatever. Like it doesn't make sense for us fiscally. So anytime there's an event or something, the consideration is, do I just, does Lou want to go? Because he can go to an event and network, and I'm paying for a hotel, an airline ticket, and that's it, right? I'm not paying for a bunch of people's airline tickets, a bunch of people's hotel rooms, the booth, all the stuff we need for the booth, and we're able to do the thing that for us would be necessary from a convention.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, all of that behind the scenes pragmatic stuff. I kind of wanted to get into what that means for indie press, because that's sort of what I'm going through in life at the moment. I know Janet is also in that ringer, and I'm sure there is a lot of crossover between what developers go through and what we're like. It's funny for me because I always think like the indie press and indie developers have a lot more in common than perhaps we both know. So I want to shout out the process for me right now. Scheduling is wild. It happens all the way up until usually like the day of whatever is happening. I always try to start by making sure I have space, making sure I have time for eating. But then the day before you get on the plane, you look at your schedule, you're like, oh, oops, I don't have time to breathe. I don't know. Maybe Jan is much better at that than I am.
No,
But
definitely not. Yeah, I have only done fully in full calendar for one PAX. This will be my third one attending. I did West last year as more of a panelist. Like I didn't even apply for a media badge. I just went with my panelist badge. So I only had like a few appointments because I wasn't on the media list. I went for media for East, and I had so many emails and I made so many appointments. I think there's a couple of things that play for me, and Jill, I'm curious to know, your process for it. Maybe you have an easier time because I feel like you crank out like a million articles, so maybe it's like fine. But for me, there's the push and pull between trying to take a lot of meetings and fill a lot of spaces, and then the reality of like, okay, but what am I actually producing? Like, am I going to make content off this, or is the reality I'm not going to get enough time? And frankly, with all the appointments I took at PAX, I just made a list and started writing articles for all of them. And I'll be honest, I didn't get through all the way through the list. I didn't, I tried to do a variety of content as well to sort of pad that out. Because I knew I'm not going to be cranking out 7 articles a night, while I'm here. Like that's just not going to happen. You have other things going on, parties, events, just existing, going to sleep, making sure you're, fresh, recharged, all this stuff that you're monitoring. But that's kind of my process, filling it in. Like you, I try to make the gaps of, okay, well, we'll need to eat at some point, so like let's try to leave a little space here. My dream schedule is like at least a 15-minute gap between appointments so that you are not late. In reality, I do usually end up stacking them next to each other, which is
back to back.
Mostly fine because a lot of appointments, especially depending on what you're taking, like you might not need the whole appointment, or you might not even be able to fill the whole appointment, and they just kind of have you slotted that way. There's also the reality of a lot of times you go to a booth, they might be running late. Now you're running late for later. And like, I think everyone understands that. So I feel like as long as you are doing your best, communicating via email or text or whatever, if you are going to be significantly late, I'd say, like more than 5 minutes. Like if it's like, oh, you're barely running late. I think 2 people are cool with like, hey, I actually need to stop here because I have an appointment like
Yeah.
right now. And I feel like everyone's pretty understanding of that. When I can, I'll drop in on stuff too. That's why this time around I'm covering through min max, and my job is just to do the vlog. So I'm like, I'm not taking appointments this time, but I do plan to go play some stuff, which will be a lot chiller, and I can kind of go at my own pace. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with it. So Jill, I'm curious, what is your approach for everything you take? Are you planning on writing content? Do you have a certain type of content you do? Do you drop stuff if you're like, you know what? Do I want to write 600 words on I don't like this game? Do you just throw those out? Like, what do you do for that,
So for me, I try to be mindful. My appointments tend to run back to back, and I know that that's going to happen. In order to keep them from blending together, I'm usually on my phone, and I tell people this. I'm going to be on my phone, and I'm going to be literally taking notes in my phone while I'm playing this game. I'm not texting, I promise. Most people are very not only very okay with that, but they like to tease me later and be like, are you texting, to like make me freak out. So I'm like, no, I promise I'm not. But there is a little bit of truth to when we were talking about earlier of walking through the indie section and not making eye contact, because I am literally
Sorry.
trying to go
That's so funny.
So I've learned in my time to book time to not have appointments so that I can go through and see the things that I didn't know existed. I tend to try really hard to break up my schedule with things that are like, I know I need to cover this, like quote unquote need, like it is the big indie thing, but I want to make sure that there are some little known gems in there as well. That's a big part of me being able to cover my own stuff. For like coverage schedule, I like to say that the Indie Informer is a person first place. So I typically will not cover anything that week. My entire week is just news and information gathering and percolating on what I played. If I play something and it's meh, or like I didn't enjoy it at all, typically I'll just skip it. Because I don't have the time. I am running a very small website. It is me and currently John Carson, who, lovely human being, runs a lot of my news. So I physically do not have the time to cover everything. And if I'm going to decide to cover something that I didn't like, that means I'm not covering something I did like.
Right.
So typically, if I didn't mesh with something, unless it's something that it's like, this is a high profile thing and it falls flat in a very important way, and it is something I need to impart to somebody, then I'll cover it. But for the most part, I do be like, wow. It's like you talked about Henry Halfhead before. I went to the Mix when they were first showing Henry Halfhead, and I can't remember. I think that was at GDC. And I didn't know anything about that game. I didn't know anything about the creators. I just had time to stop by and play the game. And I was like, okay, this is going to the top of my list for getting stuff out. Because I didn't know what this was, and I want to get information out. I want to get people's eyes on it, and it's an exciting new thing. So yeah, I have a tendency to not do coverage. Usually what I'm putting on the site that week is going to be like, this is what I saw. This is the fun booth that I was at. Look at this developer. You might know them. Sort of snippets, behind the scenes sort of stuff, so that I can take my time to cover things, because it is not to anybody's benefit if I am, getting up early in the morning, getting back to my hotel late at night, and staying up even later to try to pump out just content. Just get anything on the website, go. And then wake up and be a zombie for my next appointments, and so on and so forth. I do have a tendency for my eyes to be a little too big for my stomach. And I tend to, like you said, I'll go through and I'll like write out all of the things that I covered, because it helps me to actually physically write things. So I do keep my physical journal with me as I am covering things. And I know that I've got like 50 games to cover in a week, and I'm like, there's no way I can do like 10 articles a day. Sometimes that means, hey, I went to the mix, so I'm going to do all the things I saw at the mix that I really liked, and they don't get their own breakaway stuff. Yeah, and then sometimes something exciting happens that I wasn't expecting, so that does get a breakaway. And sometimes I'm like, hey, y'all are releasing in 2 months anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip over doing stuff right now, and I'm gonna do review coverage because I really enjoyed what I played.
Yeah,
How does that? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like how that tends to shake out, and that's mostly what I lean on. I'll cover stuff if it's like maybe. Sometimes I will cover something that's just okay, and I'll be like, this was just okay, because I usually also take the appointment thinking I'm gonna like the game or being interested in the game. You know, like obviously you can cover a lot. You can cover a lot of stuff, but I'm like, I cover stuff that I saw this, it piqued my interest. Did it deliver or not? Yes or no? And I mean, I think in a preview space too, a demo space, oftentimes the impression's like pretty solid because it's like, well, how I don't have a lot of time with it anyway. You know what I mean? Like you like curated this specific thing, so a lot of times it does shake out pretty solid. But yeah, I think if I really disliked something, I usually do skip it just because I'm like, a game that maybe you haven't heard, like, oh, also don't play it. It's like, well, maybe I didn't need if it's within the middle, I can kind of have the pros and the cons. But if I'm really just pretty negative on it, which like the follow-up emails can get a little awkward, but that's I'm like, frankly, they're like, we can send you a code. I'm like, you do not need to. I actually did not really click with this, which is always a little awkward, but I think is important to do. I think a lot of people. I think there's ways to be honest without being rude, and I think people sometimes forget that that's a possibility.
I think it really helps me that in my past life, I dealt with donor relations in a museum because you can't say no to someone giving you money if they're asking for something ridiculous. So you have to find nice ways to say it. So if pro tip for anybody who wants to be covering video games, find very polite ways to say no to things, but like firm, like don't be wishy-washy about it. Unfortunately, there is a lot of navigating that space because you want to keep a good relationship with everybody, but just say, hey, I'm not like, I don't want you to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I hope, I like the next project. Is that
from a developer perspective? Thank you for saying no. Thank you for communicating. Thank you for saying anything, because our experience has been, oh my gosh, yes. Oh, I love it. I want the game. Oh, I want to cover it. I'm so excited. And like they don't even redeem the key. And it's like, well, why are you bothering me? Why do you want the key? If you're not actually interested, why are you wasting my time? I don't know. So the responses are fantastic, and they are the exception, not the rule, from our end of things. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I probably have definitely redeemed keys. I have not played. I think sometimes
it's not so much about redeeming. It's like they don't redeem them.
Sure.
They get the key and never do anything with it. So you at least redeem them, like you said, which is great.
Yeah, I think definitely, like, for people listening that are on that content perspective, even on the smaller scale, I think a lot of times like people that are breaking into the press side of things sort of are hyper focused on maybe that AAA, maybe their end goal space of what they want to cover. Like there's so many ways to be busy and involved at any level. And that's not to say that like it's a progression either, because Jill, I mean, that's kind of how you've carved your career, where you're like, I'm focusing on indie coverage. Like a lot of the coverage you do, other people could like get access to fairly easily. Like it's not really about, I think people get hyper focused on the idea of, I need to have a hard time doing my job almost. Like if you want to cover video games, there are a cajillion video games and people that are like, I'd love for someone, like it's not that difficult to get out there. I think it is
shockingly so. Like it is strange. Like when I stopped being an intern and I was sort of a freelancer for the first time, and I like reached out to Red Hook of Darkest Dungeon fame, and I was shocked when they're like, "Yeah, absolutely, we'd like to work with you." I'm like, "You guys don't know, I'm like literally nobody. I'm not with an outlet. I'm just pitching things." So like, if you are interested in being like, it's a hard way. I'm not gonna lie, but like, it is shocking to the degree to which a lot of people are amenable to showing you their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, y'all mentioned a lot about like the cost and like, is it worth it for you or your game to like come to a convention? I think that cuts on the press side too. Like, it is expensive to go if you're not again, this trip Min-Max is paying for it, but I've gone solo the other times and I just pay for it. I mean, I write it off at the end of the year, but like the write-off doesn't make it free. Like, it's not like the government pays the whole thing. It's just, a slight change in like your income or whatever. I think the value that I get out of it, and Jill, you could feel free to chime in with your experience. Besides just getting a lot of hands-on time with games, there's an energy to being involved into having the option to like go full to the grindstone on making content, whether it's video, your Instagram stories, your articles, like however you want to go about things. And there's something really, really exciting about that. And I definitely encourage everyone to go to at least one convention if you are a press or content creator. And it doesn't have to be PAX. Like, it could be something local that maybe is a lot more affordable for you. Like, I remember back when I was a teacher and I was first kind of working towards building this career, had taken my spring break and going to like the Midwest Gaming Classic, and that being like one of the highlights of my life in a very genuine way, just because I'm like, oh my God, like this is absolutely what I want to do with my life. Now, granted, every day is not the magic of like PAX and my day, kind of right. But you remember those moments and those highs and what it feels like to connect with people. And I don't know, there's something very magical and special about even just, I think, interacting with developers face to face, who oftentimes are a little, green to showing their game too. And I'm like, hey, can you be on camera really quick? That's like also my hack for working. I just put on camera. I'm like, how about they tell me about the game? Like, I don't have to stand in front of a kiosk and do, hey, I'm game on, whatever. I'm like, I'm with so and so, pitch me your game. And they're like, oh man, I don't want to do this. But I'm like, oh, but now like we have the content, and then you got your game out there, and it's this great mix. So definitely I think it's worth checking out for those reasons. Like, I've really enjoyed my time from even just like an emotional, psychological perspective.
Kind of just to tack on to the end of that there, our first two conventions that we ever did were a like smallish convention down in Texas called Retropalooza. And that was our first experience demoing anything. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was the first time that anybody who was on the team like got to see each other in person. And we just got to kind of spend a little bit of time together. We got to get a little bit of experience on what it's like having people come up and try your game and then go off and do something else. And I don't know that we got any kind of clout or presence from it, but it was fun, and it certainly wasn't nearly as expensive as going to PAX.
Yeah. I think Janet nails it on the head. There is an like electrical energy of being in that space. It's someone said very smartly, and I've stolen it ever since, said it's sort of like going back to college. Like, you're all sort of there for the same purpose, even though you don't know each other. These are your people. And I sort of I never feel more like a journalist than when I am there, even though I'm not doing work while I'm there, essentially, because it's such a siloed occupation. Writing is not a group effort. It is something that you do in your own little space, sitting at your desk, like in your own head, getting out there. And I mean, the only other time you really don't is when I'm podcasting with all of you lovely people, to have an idea of what's happening in other people's heads and how they're feeling about things. And being able to, like, games journalism is such a small community.
Yeah.
Like, I know there are a lot of outlets and there are a lot of people who do things, but like, you are essentially, you're going back and you're seeing your friends, and they care about what they're doing and they understand Like if you go, hey, I have to go finish something, like everybody understands, no one's giving you a hard time, everyone's offering to like help you in whatever way they can. Like there is not a lot of animosity that goes on behind the screens. I know people like to think that, oh, there's big rivalries between all these outlets and whatever, but for the most part, everybody's just happy to see each other, and we've all jumped ship to different places so many different times.
Or been pushed off the ship, you know, and they're like, "Hey, you got space on that boat? What's going on?"
Yeah, I've been left on the ship as someone
built your own
fired it.
rinky-dink little raft, and I'm like, you
Yeah,
know, you ever
built
try to
my
make
own
yourself
raft.
one of these? It's pretty fun.
But then everyone's happy to see you've made your own raft, and they're happy to like
Exactly. They're like, you know, I've
support
been
you.
thinking of making my own raft, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna say anything, but like, you don't seem happy on your boat, and they're like, "Oh, no one is, you know. Anyway, but
Truth. All of the conversations behind the scene are nautical themed.
like, how's it
For
going?
some
How's
weird
it
reason.
actually going? It's not going.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And there are two questions: how is it going, and how is it really going?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
So that I think sums up a very good, complicated, wild, fun, frustrating conversation about indies at conventions. Let's go to a purely happy conversation. What we've been playing. Indies are always fun to be playing, and I do want to, because our lovely Colorgrave guests are here. Let's start out with Curse Crackers. I want to do the full title because I haven't yet. It's Curse Crackers for Whom the Bell Toils. And that messed me up a couple of
Nailed
times
it.
because I'm like, what is that last word?
It's always interesting to see who can pronounce it all the way through correctly.
No one can do it. It's an impossible task.
I mean, you did it right there. So
thank you.
you're on the list that doesn't exist, but it's there. You're
It's
in
there.
there in spirit.
Congratulations.
I'll make that list. I'll put it on the website.
Yeah, you could publish anything you want, Jill.
So your game came out on PC some time ago, but you just very recently, August 24th, had a Switch release.
Yeah.
Jan and I both got codes to check this out. It is very much a retro 2D platformer. All of the y'all, the sounds. Like first thing that hit me, I'm like, this is nostalgia bottled.
No,
You did that on purpose.
It's nostalgia.
Yeah,
This is like a term that I'm trying to get off the ground.
I love it.
And genuinely, that was my first feeling to it. And I'm a huge platformer fan. I'm also a huge fan of, I don't know what you'd call this trope, and I don't even know how often I've seen it, but having like a pseudo companion that is like a tool, basically. I guess you kind of see that in like, you know, the Banjo-Kazooification of platformers, right? In that sense. So just having like your little like partner where you can like use it to, you know, traverse and attack, like those things were kind of instant clicks for me, and I was really excited to see that as well.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. The pixel art, Brendan, you've outdone yourself. It is absolutely eye-catching. I love to be in that world. I hope I get time to get all the way through it. With PAX coming up, maybe I'll play it on the plane. Because it, you know, that's something the Switch is good for.
Great on the go.
How has that been, the porting it over situation?
I mean, porting it was fine. You know, we had a very talented individual helping us that was recommended to us by a friend of ours named Cephazon. He helped us, you know, make sure everything was going to be nice and perfect for the Switch. I worked with our community to do testing and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it was, for us, that part was just another day in the office, basically. The part that's been kind of a learning curve has been actually the whole release process, trying to market it, trying to get it in front of people. That's been the fun bit, we can say.
Well, hopefully this show has been a more fun part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to talk to people about it. It's, you know, I messed up the release dates for other regions, so there's like a lot of stuff that was like, oh, okay, we're learning, I touched the stove, my bad, I won't do it again, I promise. And like I said, we had the build ready for a very long time. We were just kind of waiting for a few different puzzle pieces to fall into place, and it eventually became like, okay, we can't wait anymore. We just have to go. So we dropped it at an inopportune time, you might say. But we're doing the best we can, all things considered.
Inopportune like a fox.
Yeah.
Like no one would be wild enough to put their game out this week.
Oh yeah, it's actually
no one would expect it.
It's actually a power move,
Yeah.
We're crazed individuals. We are
Take
out
that,
of our
PAX.
minds.
Take that, Armored Core. Everyone's going to be too busy playing Curse Crackers.
I mean, honestly, like it sort of reminds me of what you all touched on with the earlier conversation of boot space and trying to figure out how to get that attention. Because frankly, like this came across my email as many things do, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most vigilant on my emails, and I also don't tend to, like, if I get code and I haven't requested code, I'm like, that's great, but I don't know if I have. I hope, I'm sorry, like, it's like that kind of thing for me. When Krista Yang she had DM'd me and was like, hey, how's it going? I sent that email. I was wondering, what your plans, and I'm like, you know what? I'll really try to make some time for it. I'm a fan of Krista's work. I'm a fan of her having that cosign, and that was sort of what pushed me into that. Where I'm like, all right, I'm going to prioritize this now and kind of add to the top of my pile. And sometimes it does take that. I don't know if that method works all the time. Obviously Krista knows me, so yeah. I think it's a lot more fitting for her to be able to approach me in a more candid way and in a more casual way to be like, hey, I'd love for you to check this out. I think it's special. I want to find a new audience on Switch. Like, she knows my sensibilities, so there it works. But sometimes it does take that extra, slightly more informal hustle when you know when to pick your spots. And I feel like that sort of snowballed into her being like, hey, by the way, like I mentioned the podcast. I'm like, I don't know when to what capacity, but I'm like, you know what? This is a perfect place for it. And that kind of snowballed into this. So I feel really fortunate that kind of all shook out that way, because genuinely, like, I really am enjoying it. I'm loving my time with it. I don't know if I would have, caught my eye if Krista didn't give me that extra push. And it very much is up my alley. Like, I love platformers to pieces, and I'm just like really glad that I was able to carve out the time for it. Obviously, that's not always the case, but I feel like this is such a perfect storm of everything sort of coincided in a way that it doesn't always end up shaking out.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Mike to get his eyeballs on this, because this seems absolutely 100% his jam. So we'll see the next time we record. I'll try to make him look at this game and see if he goes wild for it. But yeah, for anyone who is listening and has not seen or heard of Curse Crackers for Whom the Bell Toils, please give us a quick pitch, get them excited about it.
You want to do it, Lou, or you want me to?
You're always better at it than I am.
All right, Curse Crackers is a retro acrobatic platformer. You're playing as Belle and you're chasing Bonnie. Bonnie just kidnapped your brand new boyfriend in the middle of your first date, so that's a bit uncomfortable. But, you've got your little buddy Chime. You can throw him, bounce off him, get up to all kinds of mischief, and you have a wild world laid out before you. You have the basic sort of world map platformer, but you also have towns and side quests and all sorts of interesting characters to encounter and meet as optional content. So, we've gotten the feedback a ton of times of, I looked at this and thought it was knee deep, but suddenly I'm drowning. And, there's a lot of content to chew on. There's a lot of depth to get into if you want to, but you'll get what you put into it. So I hope you enjoy it.
And just to kind of add on to that, like, a lot of the things that we took inspiration from are things like, Super Mario Brothers, Kirby, Wario Land, maybe a little bit of Shantae in there too. Just a lot of, good old classic games that we enjoyed a lot and wanted to kind of pour our love for those things into its own shape.
Yeah, that definitely comes out in the playing of the game. If any of those games, or if any of that pitch sounds good to you, if you're watching or listening to this, the link for the game I'm going to put in the description. So make sure you go check it out. buy it. It's out now, both on PC and on Switch. Before we go, I want to go ahead and do a couple more shout outs for games that I've been playing. And you can read more about them on my website because I have thoughts up about all of them. But Justent is mispronounced because it is a French word, and that doesn't sound French enough. I probably have too many letters in there. I got to do a preview of this game. It is sort of minimalist, don't really know what's going on, kind of spooky, kind of like what's going on, post-apocalyptic sort of. But then you have the cutest little companion, he's squishy face, and he looks like a little water drop. So go check that out. Blasphemous 2, I got to jump into for a little bit, and I have my early impressions up. It's hard, y'all. I'm not gonna lie, but it's a lot of fun. And then Dawn Duality also just went up last week. You are playing as a mobster who was running a fake restaurant business, but you need the restaurant business to be doing successfully to a certain extent so that you can hide the money that's coming out of your more non-legal business.
So you're operating a front is what the game is.
So you're running both operations at the same time and trying to balance
That's really interesting.
all of the resources and things that go into that. So please do check that out. Janet, do you have anything else you want to shout out for this week?
No, I've basically just been rocking with Curse Crackers. I've been embargoed to hell with other projects I've sort of taken my time.
Too true.
I think the last thing I want to shout out with Curse Crackers, because again, I'm a platformer stan, so I feel like it is the genre I came up on. It's the genre I have the most expertise on. One thing I've been enjoying so far, and I'm pretty early into the levels, is I like how casual and chill it is just to kind of make it from point A to point B while having like those little sort of challenge rooms sequestered with, like the breaking of the plates to open the chest and things. Personally, well, again, I kind of like every form of a platformer. I'll even rock with a bad platformer. Like I kind of hang out in a lot of platform spaces, but I really enjoy the stuff that is simple to get through with a little bit of difficult spots that you can pick your spots on. Not that I'm against pure, brutality either, because I enjoy that to a degree. But I think when it's structured in this more traditional sense where it's a level, it has checkpointing in it, it fits the best when it has that as a more kind of like optional pocket, just in terms of, I think, ease of getting through things. So yeah, plan to keep rocking with that. We'll see what I end up queuing up on my Steam Deck. I'm ready to end the meme too. I will be playing Goobies really soon. Mike has been recommending it. I have it there. I really want to play before this episode, but I'm like, I just do not quite have the time for it. So maybe that'll be my playing game. I need to get that done before it goes on for too long and becomes like a running gag on the show. So we'll be queuing it up soon.
I love it. But that's the end of this week's council. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching and listening to us. Thank you so much to our new council member guests, Color Grave. I hope you guys had a great time. I hope we weren't too scary.
No, this has been wonderful. It's been great to come on and talk about this stuff and hear sort of a perspective even that we haven't heard before, which is like the press side of things.
And 100%, I love hearing the developer side of things that we don't get to hear that often either. So I hope everybody listening enjoyed both of those unusual perspectives. You can find the show on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcast. I think perhaps we're still working on Google as everybody is trying to figure out PAX. That's not been moving around as fast as we want. Speaking of PAX, make sure to check out Jenny and Mike. They have panels going on throughout the week. And then lots of indie coverage from the rest of us. So keep an eye out on that. This session is closed. Go and play some indies.